What's going on, everybody? John Eric Poli here with my MMA news, and today I'm joined by Jose Johnson. Jose, of course, fighting Garrett Armfield at UFC Vegas 70 on February 25th. Jose, thanks for doing this, man. Really appreciate the time. I know you've had a very busy schedule as fight night gets closer and closer here, so I appreciate making the time for this interview.
Hell yeah, man! You gotta look pretty.
Of course, and you just got your hair cut fresh, so you look better than I do in the suit. I could tell you that much with that fresh cut you got there. So
Man, it's that tie for me.
the nice orange tie, it does. It stands out. I know. But I do want to, we can talk style a whole other time here. Everybody's going to be tuning in for this interview to hear about this fight. And let's get started with this being your UFC debut. Of course, This is a very, very big moment for you in your career. Just how excited are you for this debut? And has it all sunk in that, hey, I'm here. I'm in the UFC?
Yeah, it has, and people think that I would be like super ecstatic about it, and I am. I'm very proud of my hard work and me staying the course. Yes, but I know like the real hard work starts now. This is when this is when the fun really begins. This is when I really get to showcase. So that's what I'm excited for.
I understand with all of that too does come nerves and pressure. Do you feel any of that, or is this just more, you knew you'd get here one day and this is all just kind of business as usual?
I don't feel the nerves about it. Okay, so this is what I'm most nervous about. I'm most nervous about like making a mistake on camera because I'm so like myself and I don't know how to be anything other than myself that maybe like I would come off a little too raw to people, but in this sport, that's not really a thing anymore. you know, Everybody used to kind of just like really be like super shy and timid and everything. Now everybody can kind of really be their own style. So but that was the only thing that I was really nervous about. A fight is a fight. I've been fighting my whole life. It's gonna happen regardless of you being nervous about it or not. So this is what
Yeah,
it is.
that is true. Whether you're nervous or whether you're cool, calm, and collected, fight night rolls around. It's time to go, and when your time's called, there. I guess any advice that you've gotten before your debut that maybe has stuck out to you or anything?
Um, don't shit on yourself. No, I'm joking. I had a coach say that to me one time, but but no. Honestly, a lot of meditation. I listen to a lot of spiritual music on fight day, and then leading up to fight week, keeps my head clear. You know, uh, Turning off your phone for periods at a time.
I was gonna say this whole meditation thing. It's funny that I'm so glad you brought it up because I was actually just thinking to myself, like, is this something that I should look into? Because so I'm sure you can see behind me, I'm a big Green Bay Packers fan. Like Aaron Rodgers has talked a lot about meditation. I listen a lot to the one comedian Nikki Glazer and her podcast, and she says same thing. She meditates a lot, and I'm like, is there something like behind this that I'm not realizing that like really helps with calming people down and being ready for like a big moment? Like, what is it about meditation that you've seen the results and that you practice doing this on a regular basis, especially before a fight?
Okay, so me personally, I'm a science major. I graduated from Texas A&M, and I majored in biology and I minored in psychology. So psychology is something that I actually like really studied really deeply into because a lot of people don't understand that fighting is more mental than it is physical. If you're mentally not prepared, you're mentally not yourself, your performance will follow, regardless of how physically prepared you are for it. So when you meditate, you put yourself and your mind in a state of tranquility, and it allows you to open up certain percentages of your brain, thoughts, actions, everything that typically on a normal basis you don't. If you don't meditate on a daily basis, because scientifically we only use a very small portion of our brain's capacity. When you meditate, you're able to open up. You're able to filter out all the bad stuff, all the negative stuff, and you really focus more so on the positive. And if you go to that fight with a positive mindset, typically you get a positive outcome.
And as you mentioned about the positive mindset, I was actually thinking while you were answering that, I came across meditation actually another time too. I'm currently reading, I'm almost done with it. It's a book, it's called The Power of Positive Thinking. And in one of the
Mm.
chapters, it actually talked about how every single person, every single day should take 15 minutes. I don't know if you suggest to do it more or not, but 15 minutes of meditation where you just lay in a quiet room, just in complete silence, and just use that time to just decompress and just not even think about anything going on. Just sit in a nice quiet room. Is
Mm.
that how long you normally do it for, like 15 minutes, or do you go even longer with the meditation period?
Typically, I like do it in the shower. I personally, because there's different forms of meditation, it doesn't always have to be done in silence. A lot of people do it in silence. I like to do it with a consistent noise, a specific consistent noise, and the water hitting the shower, like the shower floor, is very like tranquil for me. So that actually sends me into a different type of place. That state that people who sit in quiet rooms typically try to reach, and I'm able to filter out so many of my thoughts. So,
Well, I would say, I'm sure a lot of people out there love taking hot showers, so that maybe could go into the meditation period. And that's great advice out there for people too. And I appreciate you clearing a lot of that stuff up there. Let's get back into the fight game here now a little bit, though. I know you did fight on Dana White's Contender Series recently. How much did that experience of being able to, experience what the Apex was like and kind of just being around like the PI and the facility and everything kind of help towards this debut as opposed to somebody who's never had this experience? It kind of goes into a UFC fight week not really knowing what to expect. At least you're very familiar with or at least familiar a little bit as to how the UFC is going to operate there on fight night.
hmm um, how can I put this? So I fought on the Contender Series twice now.
Oh, that's right. You did fight on it
Um,
twice. Okay, I'm sorry. I forgot about
uh,
the second fight there.
that first time was extremely overwhelming. It was crazy. Getting picked up at the airport and the sign saying your name and Jose, UFC and everything. Like it was, man, it was wild. It was crazy. Getting put into the like presidential like SUVs and stuff like that. It was dope. It was dope. I loved it. I was soaking it all in. But you tend to get a little distracted by um, all the flashes, and I do believe that I I did too much during my warm ups. I did my cut entirely too fast because I was worried about doing interviews more so than anything, and I really wasn't really focusing, and my performance showed that, and that's why I came up short in that first showing on the Contender Series. The second time, I was a little more prepared. I knew what we were gonna do. Plus, that first time it was really difficult because that was during COVID, so it was terrible. Uh, but the second time rolled around, and man, I was already down with the process. I already knew the whole thing. I knew we had to go get our bags, our fight kits, everything. I was completely prepared, and that's why my showing was a lot different this time. Um, with that, carrying that into my UFC debut, I'm extremely confident. Extremely confident. It's something that I've seen, or even halfway experience. Of course, the Contender Series is different than the UFC, but the little bit of the limelight is something that I'm adjusted to.
I see. You can definitely tell mentally you were completely dialed in with such a major part of the sport. Let's get into, I guess, some of the physical stuff now with the sport. Training camp still going on. Now you're starting to put the final touches on it here as fight night's coming up pretty quickly here. Just how's your camping going?
Great. I I actually trained with a lot of different people for this fight camp to get a lot of different looks because I don't train for a specific fighter. I train to fight. God forbid something can happen to Garrett and he's got to pull out and they find me a different person. If I focus my training camp solely on that one person's style, what if I get a person who's totally different? You know, Now I'm like, oh dang, well we just worked a whole fight camp based off of one person. No, we don't work a fight camp based off of one person. We work a fight camp to fight. So I've just been heavy on everything, and the end part of the fight camp, we just amp that cardio through the max. That's about it.
So I know you mentioned about how you approach your camp, that you're prepared for a fight, not necessarily on a specific opponent. But I was going to ask, like, to ask about your opponent, like, to tell us a little bit about him. Did you scout him at all and put any preparation into any specifics on him, or was, like you were saying there, like, you didn't even care about any of that type of stuff? You were just worried, just focusing all your effort into just being the best fighter that you could be on fight night and not really worrying about his skill set.
That's absolutely what we did. I watched one fight of his, and only because it was on accident. It was before I even knew who he was. Well, not knew who he was. I've heard of him. I seen him fight as an amateur even, and it was when the UFC, the second time the UFC contacted me, and they wanted me to fight David Onama on like a week's notice at 45, and we watched the fight with him and David Onama, and my coach was like, "Our time will come. We don't need to rush it. Just be patient." So we didn't take that fight. So, but I ended up watching that fight though, and that's when I had seen him. That's when I had seen him fight, and yeah, no, I'm not really looking at him or any special skills that he has. I'm just training for a fight. It's a fight. Anything can happen. Who knows? Maybe I turn into a wrestler.
Well, I say we're gonna find out all the answers to those questions, I guess, on fight night here in a couple of days. I want to talk about you and your career now here a little bit, and I actually want to start going back to the Mo Miller fight, because I remember when you beat him and how it caught really the masses saw that as such a huge win because Mo was hyped up so much from the Contender Series and everything. Did you see a big shift, like, with your career after that win because of just all the attention it got when you were able to go out and beat him that night?
Nothing really happened, honestly. I didn't. It was like it was more so like people were like, oh, okay, you can tell he really upped his ground game. You know what I'm saying? Like I've come to the point where virtually anybody I stand in front of, um, if you're smart, if you're a smart fighter, if you have a fight IQ, you're not gonna just stand up with me and just trade with me. Like I'm 6 foot, I got a 72.5 inch reach, and I fight at 35. Like you're gonna be like, yeah, we're gonna try to slow this guy down a little bit. We're gonna try to put him on his back. Now that I fixed those jujitsu hoes, now it's gonna become a problem for anyone to even try to take me down or hold me down in that sense. Um, then we went and put the finishing touches on it and started working back to the wrestling roots and grinding hard on that. So yeah, I know I'm excited, man.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say too. I mean, you've been really hot as of late here, right? You won three in a row. I think victories in four of your past five. I mean, what's been clicking in that stretch? Has it been, like you were saying, working on maybe some of those little holes that you had with some of the ground game area stuff? Like, what's kind of been clicking during this hot stretch that you've been on?
It was more so like I don't have all the chances in the world. I got to give it everything I got. So I got to really dial in and focus on these things that I really needed to fix in order for me to get to the level that I want to get to, that I know that I am at. Um, Real quick, just going back to that question that you had asked before, there was something else I wanted to add on to that. My, I didn't, I didn't get anything like any like major praise for like beating Mo Miller. People were like, "Oh, that was a tough fight. It had me losing." People, and then I kind of like I did like a silence the crowd kind of moment. Actually, there's a picture they caught me after I submitted him. He was still on the ground, and I got up and I ran, and I put my finger in in front of my mouth, like shh, just to silence all the people who were like, "Oh, he's just gonna dog wrestle him the whole entire time, and he's gonna either submit him or something like that." And he couldn't even finish a basic rear naked choke after countless attempts because I had worked a lot on my jujitsu defense. Ended up stuffing a couple takedowns as well, and every strike that I landed bothered the hell out of him. So it forced him to make a lot of jujitsu mistakes. The fight that really got me recognized was when I fought Dulani Perry after that. And Dulani is known for just talking a bunch of crap. He was on the Ultimate Fighter show. No one liked him. So everybody tuned into that fight because they know the type of fighter I am. I'm a knock you out kind of type of fighter. And no one likes this dude's mouth. So when I knocked him out in 10 seconds in the first round, everybody was like, yes. That's when people started like hitting me up. And they're like, bro, like, thank you so much for knocking that dude out. That's when it started.
Yeah, I got you. And that's a big moment there for you in your career. And as you were saying all that too, it made me actually think I want to ask this question for you too. You had mentioned in an answer earlier about your length and your size for bantamweight, and obviously it showcased in that fight you were just mentioning there. But I've seen it time and time again too, where fighters have had a very long reach advantage, had a size advantage, and for whatever reason they can't figure out how to use it correctly. How much time do you focus on when you're in the gym? Like, I know I'm going to be tall, I know I'm going to be long in there. I got to make sure on fight night I utilize that to my biggest advantage, because for me personally, what I always say, if somebody ever asked me to build a perfect fighter, I would pick the guys that are those real tall, lanky guys that know how to use their reach, because you guys are extremely, extremely dangerous when you learn how to use that.
hmm Okay. So dialing back into psychology, looking at it from a psych standpoint of view, every rangy fighter who is really good at fighting at range, people like John Jones, stuff like that, Jalen Turner, the Tarantula guy, you know, those guys in the pocket, they're actually even better at fighting in the pocket than they are at range. John Jones has some of the best clinch some of the best clinch work I've ever seen. You know, Jalen Turner has finished a lot of his fights with elbowing people in the face. Clinch game. Psychologically, when you're really good at pocket fighting or your clinch, it makes you a lot more confident at range because you're like, okay, I'm just gonna pop you, I'm gonna pop you, I'm gonna pop you. If you want to come in, I'm gonna beat you up on the inside, so it's gonna keep you more out on the outside. No one wants to take those super short, sharp knees and elbows because those ones cause cuts, damage. They'll take their chances at being at range and hopefully they can parry something and step in and shoot a takedown or something like that. So psychologically, it seems like those guys are extremely super well at keeping their range, but people really are just scared to come to the inside. So it's a mind game. It's a mind game.
Yeah, and I say, I'll tell you what, we're really learning a lot about psychology in the sport here today, too. It's great that you're opening up to this whole entire side of things. It's really a lot of what you're talking about are things that you don't even think about or really realize when it comes to the fight game with a lot of that type of stuff there. So I appreciate you bringing a lot of that to light in this interview. One of the things I want to ask, too, I don't know if this is going to date back to a psychological question or not, but one of the things that I found interesting with your career, too, if I have it right, let's see, 36 amateur fights over just a few years span. What was it with the amateur career that made you want to fight that many times? Because I honestly, I've been doing these interviews, I think maybe 3 years or so now, and you have to be the guy that's had the most amateur fights that I've ever interviewed.
So they actually don't even have them all on record. I was actually 68-12. So yes, 68-12. I held 16 belts at 4 different weight classes: 125, 35, 45, and 55. The reason why I stayed amateur for so long is because I wasn't in it for the money. I wasn't in it to gain any type of fame or stardom from it. I was in it because martial arts is actually something that really changed my life. I was living a very bad lifestyle. Where I grew up is a very bad place. And the only thing that kept me out of trouble and that kept me sane during everything that I was going through was martial arts. So I fought a lot. I just kept fighting and kept fighting and kept fighting, not thinking or wanting to go pro ever. I was having too much fun and it was keeping me sane. Um, and it wasn't until my last amateur fight is when I decided I was going to go pro. My very last amateur fight.
Well, man, we're definitely learning a lot about you here today. I guess just one last quick thing before we wrap things up. It's early 2023. You're able to get a fight in here in February. What are your goals when you look at this year as a whole that you want to get accomplished?
I'm trying to fight at least 6 times this year.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, I can tell you what, that's probably a UFC record if you pull that off.
Yes, sir. That's what I'm looking to do.
Oh, wow. I mean, how do you even map that out to get 6 fights in the calendar year here?
Hopefully the boss man's watched this interview, but I want to get in there looking to get this over with quick, and then I want him to put me on the San Antonio card. I live in Texas, you know what I'm saying, from Texas pretty much. Raised in Texas. I bring a huge fan base to that, blow the roof off that place. I really want to get on that card, and I just want to keep that ball rolling right afterwards.
All right, man. Thanks again for being here today. Appreciate all the time. Good luck with everything. I know you have a lot of goals you want to accomplish this year. Just last thing before you head out, social media management, sponsorships, anything that you got to plug, floor is yours.
Okay, I want to give a shout out to my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Without him, none of this would be possible. I want to thank my management at Uridium Sports Agency over there with Jason House and Jacob Pargo. This guy's been like family the entire time. My gyms back in Texas, Strike Kings, Wave Combat here in Washington State, it's located in Tacoma. Livewire and Cedro Woolley with Matt Cobble, North End Fitness, also here in Washington, and then not North, but Henzo Gracie San Antonio, where my jiu-jitsu coach is, my black belt over there.